Arid Zine has hit the road today. I'm not in Sydney, I'm in glorious sunny Brisbane, here to check out some amazing plant collections. And we're going to start off with this absolute stunner. A yard and a couple of greenhouses belonging to my mate Dan, who has the most remarkable collection of plants. Everywhere you look, there's something interesting, something bizarre, and something very, very rare. From caudiciform plants, Copiapoas, you name it, there's something here for everyone. And so today we're going to be drilling down into the mindset of the collector and seeing just what sorts of amazing plants thrive in this warmer, sunnier, slightly more tropical climate of Brisbane. So let's check it out and see what's growing. Now I reckon the plan of attack for today, we'll start by looking at these amazingly landscaped beds where there are some very, very rare plants just straight in the ground exposed to the elements. And then to finish it off, I'm going to take you into his two greenhouses. We've got one dedicated to cacti and some miniature succulents, and then another one that is just packed to brimming with Pachypodiums and other fantastic caudiciform plants. But first, let's just look at the amazing collection planted straight into the ground. I'm just going to start at one end and work my way across. Hopefully I'll have enough time to look at the most interesting things that are here. And why not start here with this ancient gnarly specimen of a Cyphostemma juttae. Have a look at this, just emerging out of dormancy now. It's a beautiful spring day and the leaves are coming out, and you can see, if you look closely, the start of some little flower buds. Now this plant clearly is a favourite of caudiciform growers. We're talking about a plant that comes from southern Africa, and you can see why caudiciform growers love these things. Look at that fat, gnarly trunk. It's related to grapes fantastically, and when it actually gets to the point of fruiting, the fruit look like little grapes, but I like to call them forbidden grapes because they are deeply toxic. They're full of oxalic acid, and you know, that's going to make your life not all that enjoyable should you ingest them. And then look at this big specimen plant of a Piloso cereus there, flowering. Have a look at these. I'll see if I can get in on the flowers. Your Pilosos have got the most delightful little flowers, very delicate for a towering great big blue thing. Now I love this plant. This is an Aluaudia montagnacii, fantastic member of the Didieraceae family, and they come from Madagascar, and you can see they're typified by these really vicious looking spines, and in between them, when they come out of dormancy, there are these semi-succulent leaves. You can see a few of them at the base of the plant here. This is quite a almost sculptural shape coming out of the soil here up against the white fencing. Beautiful addition amongst the otherwise general chaos of a surprising collection of plants. Look at this little Pachypodium just about to flower. In a pot out exposed to the world, Pachypodium lealii. You can see this one hasn't quite emerged from its dormancy yet, but one of the rarest species in cultivation. Seemingly quite hard to get your hands on. These come from southwestern Africa, and they grow into these really quite massive bottle trunks. And then right next to it, another Pachypodium, far more common, and you can see in this instance far larger, Pachypodium lemerii. Madagascan palms, beautiful tropical plants. Going to see plenty of Pachypodiums here today. Now this is interesting. This is a dormant plant, Adenium socotratum. Comes from the island of Socotra, and this is clearly a pretty advanced specimen. They can grow pretty quickly if you give them the right conditions. And you can see they get this wonderful big fat base. When they flower, they have these beautiful pink flowers. Really quite beautiful plants. As I was scoping out these gardens just to get a sense of what I was going to talk about today, I saw this thing. I was like, what on earth is this? It looks like, I don't know, some kind of strange thing out of the sea. This is actually a Mammillaria boccasana Fred. It's alive, surprising to me, but look at those colours, sun-stressed as anything. It's an absolute beauty. Now, Mammillaria boccasana Fred, if you're not aware, is a monstrose plant, which means it's a mutated form. It looks nothing like the typical Mammillaria boccasana, which is more of a typical low-growing, almost fluffy kind of cactus. This, however, is it typifies my love of the bizarre and the mutant, and this is just an amazing specimen. I never even knew that they would withstand the sort of blasting heat that this one is clearly getting. So, goes to show the power of experimentation, survival of the fittest style. How good's that? Yellows are in flower, absolutely beautiful. Monkey's tails. Look at this little agave Victoria reginae white rhino. White variegated form of agave, really beautiful. Typically not the cheapest of plants, but really quite surprising in how beautiful this cultivar is. What we have here is quite a remarkable and very old specimen, as you can see, of a species of Cyphostemma called Cyphostemma larsa. Now, this is a plant that I know Dan, who was collecting these plants, has sourced from a master grower up here in Brisbane, been growing plants for many, many decades, and as a result, some of the specimen plants that he's produced are just indicative of amazing time and patience. Your Cyphostemma larsa is a vining plant from Madagascar, but of course the appealing thing about it is that huge swollen caudiciform base. What I didn't know about it was the fact that it has this remarkable peeling skin. It's almost a bit like its mainland African cousins, I suppose, in that regard, which adds quite a strong visual appeal. Fantastic. And this one, as you can see, is emerging into new growth. New vines coming out of the top of that big, swollen, well-pruned base. Remarkable plant. Now here's another amazing caudiciform plant. This one here is currently still dormant, so we're not going to see any leaves on it. But this is a species called Oncorina stellulifera. Now many growers are familiar with the more common Oncorina roeseliana, which grows with these beautiful yellow leaves. But this is quite atypical of your Oncorinas. This one has remarkable pinky purple flowers. And as you can see, again, this is quite an advanced specimen, also came from that master grower. Just goes to show what a lot of patience can produce when you're growing these plants over decades. Now here we've got a garden bed dedicated to a fantastic and motley collection of huge big barrel cacti, little Pachypodiums, and then at the rear, stately columnars. Not just cacti, but all sorts of different families and genuses of plants. So let's have a look. What's worth discussing here? One of my favourites, Euphorbia stellospina. That name stellospina talking about star-shaped spines. And you can see these little spines here. They're technically called peduncles. They emerge around the base of the flowers, and you can see that phenomenon up here with these fresh little flowers at the very top of the plant, at the crown. Over time, those fresh peduncles, which are soft to the touch, will harden off. They'll end up with this fearsome protective ring of spines. Beautiful plants, and they hybridize quite easily with many of the other euphorbias from southern Africa, which makes them a favorite of myself. And what's a collection without beautiful flowering plants? Here we can see the flowers of a Pachypodium hybrid. Have a look at this. This is Pachypodium eburneum crossed with densiflorum, I believe, and remarkable caudiciform plants with those very fat bases and the spines. But the flowers in themselves make this a plant well worth collecting. Now it's interesting, right? Pachypodiums are related to your plumerias, and you can see that when you see the flowers. Get a load of that. Remarkable. We've got some beautiful little mellow cactuses here. They're cephaliums, little fruits emerging from the cephalium. Look at that. Over time they'll be really quite stunning specimens. Now this gnarly old thing is proof that you can get some fantastic caudiciform and pachycore plants from the Americas. This is a Bursera phageroides, I expect, with magnificent peeling bark. And the wonderful thing about Burseras and their relatives, all the plants from the Burseraceae family, they have the most delightfully smelling sap. I know for a fact that whenever I'm working with them, sometimes I'll just snip off a little cutting or a leaf, get the sap all over my fingers and take a deep sniff. Oh, it's intoxicating. It's absolutely wonderful. The sap from these plants and their relatives is often used in ceremonial purposes. These things are related to things like your frankincense, your boswellias, and coniferas, which is the source of myrrh from biblical terms. Now these are North American relatives of those plants, but they're no less aromatic and they're delightful to grow. And as you can see, if you're into your fat trunked caudiciform plants, incredibly rewarding in that regard as well. Not too long ago I did a video about cresting plants, and I did mention crested Pachypodiums, and here's a fantastic example of that phenomenon. Have a look at this. I'd expect this is a Pachypodium lomerii, and have a look at how the leaves emerge from that widened apical meristem. It's a really bizarre growth form. Very collectible, not easy to find plants like this one. This is a stunning example of it. Have a look at this in the corner here. This here is a pandanus plant, a spiraling pandanus plant. Now I don't know too much about these things, but it's a bold architectural statement here. And have a look at these roots. Certainly the most interesting and a little bit outlandish. Some would describe these as fairly phallic, but this is just an incredible plant. And I think I'm going to need to do a little bit more reading up on pandanus plants. I do know that these plants do come from up this way around Queensland. Don't know how well they do in Sydney's climate. I haven't really seen any down there, but worth the investigation, I'd say. Almost innocuous down here, but here's a fantastic plant. Stenocereus aruca, the creeping devil of Baja California. These are really interesting cacti that have fantastic growth form. They grow along the ground, and over time the rooted base of them kind of goes back into the earth, so to speak, and it continues to grow roots along the length of its trunk. And so literally over time the plants will move along the ground. They will develop, and given enough time and space, this one could start to creep along here. Now I want to talk about the variety in this collection, because there's your Stenocereus aruca. We've looked at some caudiciforms, and then have a look at the amazing shape of this, your Dicaria madagascariensis. This is a relative of your Aluaudia that I talked about before. But the geometrical shapes, the thorns, this one is a real showstopper, especially as it catches the light here in the corner of the yard. And I do want to stress, these plants are all just exposed to the environment, copping whatever fantastic sun and rain that Brisbane wants to throw at them. Absolutely remarkable. Not too long ago I had a video out on agaves, and I mentioned agave albopilosa. Now I don't have one of these in my own collection, so I couldn't show it at the time other than in photos, but here is a very large and mature specimen. And I did mention the fascinating thing about your agave albopilosa is that each of the leaves is tipped with this little fuzzy bundle of hairs, quite unique amongst the agaves. And therefore, that visual difference makes this a very collectible and very interesting plant. Really rather remarkable. I can see why collectors go crazy for this one now. Now, I hope you're really enjoying this show. If you do want to support Arid Zine, of course, there are a couple of avenues you can do that. First of all, check out the cool merch, like the Arid Zine Caudex Club t-shirt I've got on today. There is also a Patreon where I'm putting out bonus videos. If you were a member of the Patreon, you would have seen the big preview of this Brisbane trip. Went up quite a while ago. As well as, of course, the easy option, hit like, hit subscribe. Every little bit counts. Anyway, let's get back into this amazing collection tour. And once again, just to show you that diversity in this collection, you have a look at this. I almost walked right past it because I just saw this trailing vine. But peek down below, what do you find? An absolute monster caudex. This is Gerodanthus macrorhizis. Fantastic member of the Cucurbitaceae family. It means it's related to your cucumber. And that vine, I suppose, stands to reason, but that caudex is what makes this an absolute stunner. And look, this one is actually in flower. Have a look at those delicate little, I would describe that as browny yellow. What a unique flowering form. Fantastic. I believe your Gerodanthus typically has both male and female plants. This one I'm suspecting is female. I can't see any pollen. Very interesting. And then over here, speaking of cucurbits, the king of all the cucurbits, this here is Dendrosychios socotrana, the legendary cucumber tree of Socotra. Beautiful pachycol plant. Look at this thick trunk, and the leaves surprisingly spiny. I don't find these plants particularly easy to grow in the Sydney climate. They seem to enjoy a bit more warmth. I imagine that they're very well suited to the warmer climate up here in Brisbane. This is an absolute spectacular version. Magnificent. And then just around it, look at these other plants. I'm just casually hanging around Duostenia gigas, copping the full sun. And then behind it, in the shade there, Alopalanzii. Absolute magic. That's your giant quiver tree of South Africa. Now, that's barely scratching the surface of the outdoor collection, but time is pressing, and so I thought, I think it's time for us to have a look in the greenhouses. So let's check it out, shall we? This first greenhouse around here is dedicated to cacti and all sorts of miniature succulents, and we can see even from the front, look at these. Hardly call these miniature. Euphorbia unispina, beautiful West African plant. Some Abdulkuris, some of my favourite euphorbias. These ones, this one blending into the brick behind it. And then have a look at this. Magic, just a huge grafted clump of Euphorbia turbiniformis. Now this is one of the strangest looking euphorbias I reckon on the planet. They're incredibly hard to grow reportedly on their own roots. I've never tried it myself, but on a graft much easier, and they look like kind of weird mutant blobs. Absolutely remarkable. Now, with some degree of regularity, I talk about variegated plants. Have a look at this. This is a variegated form of Euphorbia abdelkuri called Euphorbia abdelkuri damask. And the way that the variegation expresses itself on a plant, as you can see, that is typically concrete grey, is in this almost blushing pink colour. Hence the name damask. Remarkable, absolutely stunning. Here you can see Welwitschia mirabilis. Now this is a plant from Namibia. It's, I would say, contested as to whether this is a caudiciform plant or not. But these things are remarkable. They grow for thousands and thousands of years, and they only ever grow with 2 leaves. The 2 leaves that you can see here will continue to be its only 2 leaves for the remainder of its life. Even if this plant is passed down generation upon generation and is still alive in 2,000 years, which it's entirely plausible that it could be, those will still be its only 2 leaves. Absolutely amazing. We've got a remarkable little collection here of rare Pachypodiums, big Pachypodium namaquanums in the back. Stunning. Have a look at these. Some little miniature cacti. I've got here Yarvia cryptocarpa. This is an Argentinian cactus. And the fascinating thing about these things is that they flower. And when they flower and when the flowers are fertilized, they embed the seed pods within the body of the plant. You can't just pluck the seeds very easily. You actually have to extract them. I think in nature the idea is that the seeds stay within the plant itself until the plant eventually dies, and when it does die, there's a full body of seeds waiting inside, ready to take advantage of the rotting plant body. You know, provides nutrients to the next generation. A remarkable evolutionary adaptation. And then we've got here some Pelesiforas, Pelesifora acelliformis and Pelesifora strobiliformis. These are little Mexican miniature cacti that look almost like pine cones. They're stunning. This place has got so many different plants. I'm not going to be able to have time to talk about them all. But, I've noticed something really interesting and well worth talking about. You can see these Pelesiforas and the nature of their shape. And I want to go down a few rungs here. And here we've got some plants that look very, very similar, but these are actually euphorbias, Euphorbia pachydermis. So named pachydermis, it means fish skin. But the amazing thing about this is that it's an example of what we call convergent evolution, where 2 completely unrelated plant species grow and evolve in very different locations, but under very similar conditions to look remarkably the same. And so both your Euphorbia pachydermis and your Pelesiforas have responded to the similar harsh desert environments that they grow in. And the end result is plants that look surprisingly similar. If you're into Ariocarpus, well, this place has got Ariocarpus coming out the wazoo of all sorts of different descriptions, including some species plants. Little Ariocarpus cotyubayanus here, as well as cultivars, like this one, which looks like, I don't know, is that a Godzilla? Probably. There's definitely a Godzilla behind it. Now, Godzilla, noted Japanese origin cultivar, I suppose, hence the name. Top shelf, we have some very, very old specimens, some Ariocarpus retusus. This one here, Ariocarpus cauliflower, so named because of the shape of the leaves. Fantastic. I wish I could dedicate more time to talking about this amazing collection, because there are just so many things going on here. There's Turbinicarpuses, there's Strombocactus. Look at these. Some little flowering things here. And then over here, some Asclepiads. We're looking at Pseudolithos, Pseudolithos midgiatinus, Dodsoniana, Cubiformis. And you can see these are all African plants that are very strange and bizarre. But I know when it comes to cacti, Dan's true passion is for Copiapoas, and you can just see them. Poa after poa after poa, all here on this top shelf. Now these are all the small ones, which in itself is quite remarkable, because as we get towards the end of the shelf, we start seeing the big guys. Have a look at these. What an amazing collection. And now, the wonderful thing about old plants is that over time, they develop a bit of character, and you can see some of these plants have had very long, very hard lives. And then others, right next to them, like this Copiapoa cinerea, absolutely pristine. What an absolute delight. Now, The joyful thing about collecting Copiapoas, and the thing that makes them stand apart from so many of the other cacti, is their wonderful farina. That's the white, waxy, powdery kind of coating that they developed in order to withstand the blazing sun of the Atacama Desert in Chile. And you can see it here. A well-grown Copiapoa in cultivation has this almost dusky, powdery green colour compared to some of the plants around it. This is an immaculately grown plant, and all of these plants here would be very, very old. Have a look at this. Look at the character in that. I absolutely love it. And clearly, Dan loves these plants too. Remarkable. And then over here, we've got the caudex greenhouse. And you can see on the top shelf anyway, some amazing Pachypodiums. Remarkable Pachypodium densiflorum here at the front. We've got some Horembenses in the back. And then some smaller ones like Inopinatum here, and a variety of others. Many of which are just coming back into leaf for the summer. All of which look absolutely stunning. And then of course, this little curious plastic one. Now beneath it, we've got a mix of vining caudiciform plants, and I know for a fact that some of these plants have also come from that master caudex grower. Some adenias here. Have a look at these, Adenia spinosus. Now, your adenias are members of the Passifloraceae family. That means they're related to passion fruits, and they grow with fantastic vines. But the most wonderful thing about them, of course, is their thick, knobbly caudex. Have a look at these. A lot of people will hack them right back to the caudex when they go dormant. And that sort of accentuates the magic shape. They're also plants, and they work well on a lower shelf like this, because in general, many of the plants that do develop a thickened caudex don't necessarily want it exposed to too much light. And so you can put the caudex in the shade and let the vines that emerge reach out and find the sun. Have a look at this. Little Adenia kirkii from Eastern Africa. Those leaves are absolutely beautiful. What do we got down here? Another variety of things. I can see some adeniums at the back. And then some other adenias, subsessifolia, oliboensis. I believe that some of these adenias down here are from Madagascar. A lot of these haven't yet emerged from their dormancy, so I won't linger on them for too long. And then on the bottom shelf on this side, we have some more cucurbits. Other Gerodanthuses. This one here, this big fatty here, is Gerodanthus lobatus. Again, relatives of the cucumbers, noted by collectors for the enormous fatness of the caudex base. Now the wonderful thing about collecting is that there's the opportunity to get things both rare and common. So of course here you can see some more Dorstenia gigas, and this one here, even rarer still, I would say that's a Dorstenia gypsophylla. Beautiful plants and very, very hard to source. But then beneath them, some other caudiciforms in flower right now, little syningias. Now these things, pretty easy to get from every common garden centre in Australia, but no less stunning in the fatness of that swollen caudiciform base. You can see it right here. Have a look at that. And so really, it speaks to one of the most fantastic aspects of being a collector. Yes, you can get rare things that nobody else has, but there's no reason you can't just build your collection around easily obtainable things that just look absolutely stunning. Look at those flowers. Dan, this is your collection, right? So
yep.
How long have you been amassing this amazing collection of plants?
About 4 years now.
4 years, and you've got all of this stuff.
Yeah, I went a little crazy during COVID time, so.
Yeah. And the plants in the ground, they're the same sort of time span?
Yeah, same time frame. Some of them were older species when I bought them, so yeah.
Yeah, wow. Mate, I'll tell you what, they must absolutely love being in the ground in Brisbane. It's, you know, these things are absolute monsters. Why do you collect the plants?
Just enjoy looking at them, really.
Yeah.
They're good to look at, something interesting. They always change in the flowers, the textures, different growth periods. So
Yeah. And are there any plants on the wish list, things that you really want to get that you haven't managed to snag just yet?
Oh, there's a couple of aloes, a couple of adenias, but those adenias aren't in Australia at the moment, so
yeah, something to chase, hey? I mean, that's the thing, it's always about chasing more when you're a collector, yeah?
Oh, chasing, yes, but also limitations of space, so.
Oh, tell me about it. I know all too well about the limitations of space. Anyway, mate, thank you so much for showing me around this amazing space today. It's been an absolute journey, I tell you what.
Nice to have you here and show it off to everyone.
So that's the first stop on the Brisbane extravaganza for Arid Zine, and what a show-stopping tour it's been. This place is off the charts. Dan is very humble about his collection, but I'll tell you what, I can't believe some of the plants that I've seen here and just how well they're growing. Like I said, everything from amazing caudiciform plants, Copiapoas, tiny cacti, fantastic aloes, and everything in between. This is a collection well worth checking out. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. There are more to come from Brisbane. I'm spending the whole day here shooting content and I'm so pumped. So stick around next week, Monday 9 p.m, and you're going to see the next fantastic collection. I'll see you then.